It starts with a team of astronauts going about their work on Mars. Their mission's called Ares 3, and the crew is led by Commander Melissa Lewis. The crew is collecting samples and data. Suddenly, a crew member is alerted about a massive sandstorm on the computer and informs the commander. It's huge, and the winds are so powerful that it will be a real threat. Mark Watney and another crewmate suggest to wait it out, but the commander decides to abort the mission and leave. They need to get back to their spaceship, the MAV, that is Mars Ascent Vehicle, before the storm overwhelms them. The team gets out of the airlock and tries to make their way to the ship, but as they're rushing back, the wind makes a huge piece of debris slam into Mark Watney. He's blown away into the storm. The commander tells the crew to go ahead, and she tries to search for him, but his suit is lost, so the crew thinks he's dead. They have to leave him, or they'll all be stranded. So, they take off, leaving Watney behind, thinking he's dead. Teddy Sanders, the director of NASA, conducts a press conference, giving away details of the mission. When the storm clears, Watney wakes up to the blaring sound of the alert from his suit about his depleting oxygen supply. He's injured and alone on Mars. He's bleeding, but somehow he drags himself back to the Mars habitat, the only shelter he has. He takes off his suit and performs surgery on himself to get some shrapnel out. He then makes a video log on the computer, talking about how he was hit by the debris. The antenna and the blood sealed the breach in his suit, which kept him alive. He realizes he's completely alone on Mars with no way to contact NASA, and even if he could, it would take 4 years until a manned mission can reach him. And if all the systems function well for him to stay there properly, he'll eventually still run out of food. He goes through all of his crewmates' stuff, makes a note of all the food supplies he has, and finds that he has food for around 400 days, so he will have to grow food for 3 years. But luckily, Watney is a botanist and an engineer, so he starts figuring out how to grow his food. He begins collecting his resources. He goes to the pods where the human waste is collected, takes his waste, collects mud from Mars, and starts setting up a mini-farm by creating a controlled environment to grow the potatoes in the hab. He plants them one by using his waste to fertilize the soil. 36 days pass. He has to make his own water by burning hydrogen and oxygen in a risky experiment. He uses the wood from a Jesus cross to create fire. The cross was a crewmate Martinez's personal item. He tries the experiment, but fails as there's an explosion. He makes a vlog talking about the explosion, stating he thinks it happened because he forgot to note the excess oxygen he's exhaling while calculating the details of the experiment. He tries again, and he's successful. He manages to create condensed water droplets on the panel walls. After 54 days, he finally sees a small plant sprout. Meanwhile, back on Earth, NASA held a funeral and mourned his death, as they have no clue he's still alive. Vincent Kapoor, director of the Mars mission, asked Teddy Sanders to send another mission to bring Watney's body back, as it won't decompose and will remain there forever. Teddy says he can't do that. Vincent says they currently have the world on their side and everyone's mourning for Watney, so they can announce that their next Ares mission could bring the body home. That's not its main mission, but could be a part of its mission. Then they'll get support from Congress, as no one will care if they try to do this a year later. A young satellite operator named Mindy Park is studying Mars images and notices strange changes around the hab after Ares had left Mars. Equipment has moved, and the rover is in a different spot. It looks like someone is there. She immediately reports this to higher authority at NASA. The NASA team realizes Watney is alive. Annie Montrose, the PR director, is confused as to how they will break this to the public, since they have already had his funeral. But she tells them that they legally only have 24 hours until they have to release the images, so Teddy tells her to release a statement with the images. Teddy answers questions at a press conference about the situation. Watney is planning for the future and knows where the next mission, Ares 4, will land, which is 3,200 kilometers away, on a crater called Schiaparelli. So Watney needs to get there within 4 years. The computer helps him with the path. He realizes he has 2 problems. He has a rover which can cover only 35 kilometers before it has to be charged again at the hab. And since the journey will take around 50 days, so he needs to live in the rover with marginal life support during the journey. He works on a plan. As he's working on the rover, he's able to double the battery life of one rover by scavenging the parts from the other rover, But if he utilizes the heater, it will burn through half its battery life per day, and if he doesn't, he'll freeze to death. Later, he figures out a solution to his heating problem, where he digs up the radioisotope thermoelectric generator, which is a big box of plutonium. But during his space training, they were strictly instructed not to dig up the radioactive isotope because if it ruptures around humans, it's fatal. Hence, they buried it when they arrived, as it helps the spacecraft but is very dangerous. Then we see Watney riding the rover with the radioactive isotope. Teddy gives Mindy Park authority over all the satellites to reduce the information gap of what's happening there and what they know about. Teddy asks Bruce from the jet propelling team at JPL, how long will it take them to send a pre-supply there? He says 9 months, as it'll take 6 months to make it. Teddy says he needs it to be sent there in 3 months. Mark checks on the potatoes he has grown and says they have grown better than he expected. He now has 400 healthy potato plants. He uprooted each of them carefully so as not to kill the plant, the small potatoes he will replant, and the bigger ones he will eat. Watney has to establish contact with NASA somehow. He says he has an idea, and he takes the rover and heads somewhere. Mindy notices his movements and informs Vincent. He says that he is not heading towards the Ares landing site. Then where is he going? Vincent checks his movement and knows where he's heading. Vincent goes to the Jet Propulsion Lab and asks if they can get the Pathfinder, an old Mars rover from a previous mission, to work again, while Watney finds a parachute which leads to him finding the Pathfinder. He digs it up and brings the Pathfinder to his base near the hab. He starts repairing it. He tries to jumpstart the batteries, and it works. The crew at JPL receives his location and can see images through the Pathfinder. Watney smartly asks them if they can see him using some placards. They tilt the rover's camera towards yes, and Watney celebrates. Finally, he's able to establish a text-based communication line with NASA. Watney then uses the hexadecimal system to ask NASA questions and get answers by plotting the hexadecimal around the Pathfinder. The team on Earth does it as well. They ask him how he's alive, and he tells them. Then NASA sends him instructions on how to hack the rover so they can talk through the Pathfinder. He has to make 20 changes in the rover's coding, and NASA can then link the rover to the Pathfinder's broadcasting frequency. NASA informs Watney that they have been watching him, that he did a great job getting to the Pathfinder, and they are sending some food supplies soon. He asked them how did the crew react when they found out he was alive. They told him that the crew is not informed since they need to concentrate on their mission, and he's pissed. NASA then informs the Ares 3 crew about Watney being alive. They are stunned, and the commander blames herself. NASA tries to micromanage his crops, but they realize he's doing well. They tell him to pose for a picture. They hope to send him enough supplies to keep him alive until the Ares 4 mission gets there. When Watney is in the hab's airlock, it malfunctions, blowing out violently and breaking his helmet, which he tapes just in time before he loses all his oxygen. He makes his way back and notices that all his potato crop is destroyed. Watney is devastated. He takes an extra helmet and heads to the rover to inform NASA. NASA realizes that they need to come up with a plan to send the resupply probe sooner than planned. They inform Bruce's team. NASA allows the Ares 3 crew to have a chat with Watney. He cleans the blast site and tries to seal the opening the blast left. He manages to establish cabin pressure by rebooting the systems. He checks for leaks in the hole he taped up by using smoke and seals it up with glue. Bruce tells NASA that his team is a little behind schedule, so the team discuss how to buy time by canceling the inspections. Watney talks about how his diet is reduced considerably to minimum calorie count. They start filling the probe with supplies. Launch day has arrived, checks begin, and it launches. Everyone's hopeful. But the worst thing happens, the rocket explodes shortly after launch. Watney hears about the failed launch, and he's crushed. He asks Commander Melissa to speak to his parents and tell them that he died for something extremely important. He loved his job and was very good at it. The top scientists from China National Space Administration, CNSA, watch Vincent and Teddy's interview talking about the failed launch. They call Teddy and say they can help. Bruce's team has to create the Iris probe in 28 days instead of 62 days with China's help. A brilliant young astrodynamicist named Rich Purnell comes up with a more daring idea, and he goes to NASA to tell Vincent about it. Instead of just sending a resupply, he suggests sending the Ares 3 crew by asking them to accelerate their way to Earth use Earth's gravity to change course, while picking up some supplies which will be on a probe that will be sent to the ship, go back to Mars to intercept Watney and bring him home. It's risky, and the crew will have to spend extra time in space. Teddy decides to use the food supplies option instead. Mitch Henderson, the flight director of the Ares mission, disagrees with the decision, so he sends the flight plan to the Ares crew privately. The Ares 3 crew members vote to go back for him without a second thought. They set a course for Mars, preparing for one of the most intense space rescues in history. NASA noticed the change in course, and Teddy understands it's Mitch and asks him for his resignation after the mission. Commander Melissa informs Watney that they are coming to get him. Watney has to get to the Schiaparelli crater and use the MAV at the Ares 4 site, which will be his escape vehicle, to get into space. From there, the Ares crew will pick him up. He has to travel 3,200 kilometers to reach the MAV. The NASA team asks him to make some changes to his rover to carry all the necessary items. CNSA and NASA work together to send the supply probe into space, and it's a success. The probe docks on Ares 3, and they head to Mars. He spends weeks on this trip, driving for 4 hours, then laying out the solar panels to charge the rover for 13 hours, and sleeping during this time, and repeat. NASA has to get rid of major parts of the MAV to make it lighter to reach the outer layer of space. So Bruce suggests to get rid of the top layer of the ship, which will be replaced by canvas tarp. The canvas will work since Mars' atmosphere is very thin, and the controls will be removed, and Martinez will be maneuvering the MAV. Watney is shocked when he hears this, but he complies and makes the changes. He reaches the MAV and needs to reduce the MAV's weight as much as possible. So he starts ejecting the unwanted parts, even the nose cone, leaving just a flimsy tarp covering the front. The Ares 3 crew plan on how they will get to Watney in space. Finally, the day arrives. The event is live-streamed all over the world. Commander Melissa asks Watney how he's doing, and tells him the MAV will be going really fast, so he may pass out. Watney tells her he's excited to be with him soon. The MAV launches, but does not reach the required altitude. The Ares crew is using everything they have to bring him in safely. But Watney's trajectory isn't quite right, and he starts to drift off course. Commander Melissa suggests making a bomb on the Ares ship to move it. 2 crew mates do it in the kitchen. A crewmate then plants it on the ship, and it works to move the ship. Commander Melissa, risking her life, goes out on a tether to catch Watney, but they're still far apart. So Watney, in a desperate move, punctures his suit, turning it into a makeshift thruster, and tries to navigate himself closer to her. Melissa initially misses catching Watney due to his velocity, but he grabs hold of the cable and meets Melissa, and she grabs hold of Watney, and a crew member pulls them to the ship safely. Watney is safe, and his crew is there to welcome him back. Melissa informs NASA about their success. NASA and the entire world rejoice. The movie ends with Watney back on Earth, giving a lecture to future astronauts. Thank you guys for watching. Comment below if you like space movies. I hope you liked the video. If you did, make sure to smash the like button and subscribe to watch many more such cool recaps. And hit the bell icon too.